there are moments in our lives where we face a fork in the road. And so often we think about the idea of a fork in the road in our faith is a decision between choosing God or choosing sin, between choosing good and choosing bad. We could either choose to glorify God and choose His path and head down the narrow road that only a few take, or we can choose the bad road that is convenient and easy and is all about glorifying ourselves and fulfilling our fleshly desires, our own desires for power. And so we often think about that as being the fork in the road, but sometimes the fork in the road is choosing between something that's good or something that's great. Between choosing something that is instantaneous, that let's settle on this. This is good. This will work, or waiting for something that God has in store for us, and that requires a lot of patience and a lot of trust. And so often we face the decision between the good and maybe more immediate, maybe easier path, or the great, which involves hard work and perseverance. And that's what happens here in Genesis chapter 16. You remember Abraham, he was doubting that God was going to give him a child, a son, to be the heir, to be his descendant who would have children, who would have children, who would have children, who would bless the whole world. He had remembered God's promise to him, but at the same time, he wasn't putting trust that God was going to make this promise come to fruition. And we see that he continues to do this. And in fact, it's his wife Sarah at the beginning of 16. Sarah, Abraham's wife, had borne him no children, and she had an Egyptian maidservant named Hagar. She said to Abraham, "The Lord has kept me from having children. Go and lie down with my maidservant, and perhaps I can build a family through her." Rather than putting hope in God and trusting that promise that he'd originally made, that he was going to give them a son, she's giving up. She's trying to figure out a way to make it happen. She's trying to manufacture a blessing on her own and not waiting patiently for the Lord. And we do this. We're guilty of this. There are so many things that we settle on in this world, and we know somewhere in the back of our minds that God is telling us to wait. Perhaps we settle for a certain job or settle in a certain relationship and being with someone when we know God has something more glorifying for His kingdom in mind for us. But we don't want to persevere. We don't want to be patient. We don't want to trust. We take things into our own hands. And sometimes we do that with bad intentions, but sometimes we do that with good intentions, and it's still us missing out on the great things that God has in store for us. When He makes promises to us, when He puts things on our heart, He teaches us to wait and trust in Him. To wait, to not get distracted by the bad things in the world and even the good things in this world, but to wait for the great things that He has in mind for us.